If the truth has a price. Someone was already charging me. On a Tuesday at 6:12 a.m., I made coffee, checked the weather, and signed into my work laptop like always. By 6:14, a file printed itself from the office printer down the hall. It had my license number on the footer, but the address was a house I never appraised. I noticed the paper tray was set to legal size, which we never use. Everything I believed was about to collapse. If the truth has a price, someone was already charging me. On a Tuesday morning in early October, I woke up before my alarm, the way I always did when the house was too quiet. It was still dark outside, the kind of dark that makes the kitchen lights feel harsh when you flip them on. I padded downstairs barefoot, careful not to wake Evan, and started the coffee maker. The machine gurgled and hissed, a familiar sound that usually grounded me. I stood there waiting, watching the digital clock on the microwave click from 6:11 to 6:12. Our house sat on a corner lot in a planned neighborhood outside Denver. Craftsman style, gray siding, white trim, a porch swing. Evan insisted made us look established. People complimented it all the time. Neighbors waved when they walked their dogs. Realtors slowed their cars to look. I used to feel proud of that. That morning, it felt like a stage set after the audience had gone home. I poured my coffee into the chipped blue mug I'd owned since college and carried it into the small office off the hallway. That room had been mine long before it was ours. My desk, my files, my scanner, my old leather chair that creaked when you leaned back. I logged into my laptop, entered my password, and opened my appraisal software. Same routine, same movements, almost muscle memory at this point. At 6:14, the printer down the hall came to life. It startled me because I hadn't sent anything to print. The sound was sharp in the quiet house, paper feeding through with that mechanical whine. I sat there for a second, my hand still on the mouse, listening. One page, then another, then silence. I stood up and walked into the hallway, coffee mug warm in my hand. The printer's light was still blinking. 2 sheets of paper rested neatly in the output tray. I picked them up without thinking, expecting maybe an old document Evan had queued the night before. My license number was printed at the bottom. It was formatted wrong. The spacing was off, the font slightly heavier than the one I used. My eyes moved up the page. Property address, square footage, comparable sales. Numbers that looked reasonable at first glance, but the address meant nothing to me. A split level in Aurora. I'd never appraised a house in Aurora. I checked the second page. Same footer, same license number. My name spelled correctly, which somehow made it worse. I stood there longer than I want to admit, just holding the papers. The house was still. Upstairs, Evan's alarm hadn't gone off yet. Outside, a car passed on the main road, tires humming against wet pavement. Everything else felt paused. I noticed, almost absently, that the printer tray was set to legal size. We never used legal size paper. I hadn't bought any. I didn't say anything out loud. I just slid the papers back into the tray and turned the printer off. I went back into the office and checked my sent files. Nothing pending, no drafts open, no recent edits that matched what I'd seen. I told myself there had to be an explanation. A software glitch, a sync error, something boring and fixable. When Evan came downstairs at 6:30, showered, and already dressed for work, I was standing at the sink rinsing my mug. "Morning," he said, opening the fridge. He sounded tired. He always did lately. "Morning," I said. He grabbed a yogurt, glanced at his phone, and leaned against the counter. "I've got an early call," he said. "I might be late tonight." "Okay." He nodded, like that settled something important, and went back upstairs. No kiss, no pause. The sound of his shoes thudding across the bedroom floor felt louder than it should have. I waited until his car pulled out of the driveway before I went back into the office. I opened the printer tray again and took the pages out. This time I read them slowly, line by line. The valuation was aggressive, not outrageous, but high enough to raise eyebrows. The comps were real properties. I recognized 2 of the street names from old jobs. My stomach tightened. As a licensed appraiser, my name meant something. It wasn't just paperwork. It was my reputation, my livelihood, my ability to keep working in a field that did not forgive mistakes. Every report was tied to my number, logged, traceable. If someone misused it, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was fraud. I sat down and checked my access logs. The software showed a login at 11:47 p.m., the night before. My username. My credentials. I had been asleep by then. I was sure of it. I remembered turning off the bedside lamp. Remembered the weight of the blanket. Remembered Evan already snoring softly beside me. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. We had been married for 11 years. We met in our mid-20s, when ambition still felt romantic. Evan worked in property management back then, climbing steadily, always talking about growth and leverage and scale. I liked that he was driven. I liked that he believed in building something solid. When we bought the house, it felt like proof we were doing life right. Somewhere along the way, the conversations changed. He stopped asking about my work and started asking what I was billing. He took over the finances for efficiency. He talked about risk, like it was a game you could reset if you lost. I folded the printed pages in half and slid them into my desk drawer. My hands were steady, which surprised me. I expected to feel panic. Instead, there was a tight, focused pressure behind my eyes, like something clicking into place. By 7:45, I was on my first call of the day, my voice even, my notes neat. I answered emails. I scheduled site visits. I laughed at a joke a client made about the weather. If anyone had looked at me through the window of the office, they would have seen a woman doing her job. Nothing more. But every time I glanced at the hallway, I saw the printer. That evening, when Evan came home late, he was distracted, pacing the kitchen while he talked about zoning issues and investor timelines. I listened, nodded, asked the right questions. At one point, he stopped and looked at me. "You okay?" he asked. "You've been quiet." "Just tired," I said. He accepted that answer too easily. When we went to bed, he fell asleep fast. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly above us. At 11:47, I checked the time on my phone. The minute glowed on the screen, soft and unforgiving. I thought about the papers in my desk drawer. About the house in Aurora. About my name printed neatly at the bottom of a lie. I thought about how many things in my life depended on trust, and how easily that trust could be used against me. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I didn't do anything, at all. I just lay there, listening to the steady sound of the man beside me breathing, knowing that whatever I thought my life was, it was already starting to fall apart. The next morning, I woke up with the same tightness in my chest, like I'd swallowed something that didn't belong there and my body refused to relax around it. Evan was already gone. His side of the bed was cold, the sheet pulled tight and neat, as if he'd made a point of leaving no trace. In the bathroom, his toothbrush was dry. His cologne bottle sat exactly where it always sat. Everything looked normal, which somehow made me angrier than if he'd left a sock on the floor. Downstairs, I stood in the hallway and stared at the printer. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to see that tray light up again and confirm what my brain kept trying to soften into something harmless. I went to the kitchen instead, poured coffee, and ate half a piece of toast without tasting it. I'd always been the kind of person who believed routines could fix things. If you paid your bills on time, if you returned calls, if you kept your house clean and your work honest, life stayed manageable. Even when it hurt, it stayed within the rules. That was how I was raised. Life too. Unintended. My mom worked 2 jobs after my dad left, and she did it without drama, without excuses, the way people do when they have no choice. She used to tell me, "All you can control is what you do." I built my adult life around that sentence. I got licensed as an appraiser in my late 20s. After I realized I didn't want to sell houses, I wanted to understand them. Appraising felt like the closest thing to a neutral truth in an industry full of glossy photos and exaggerated promises. You measure, you document, you justify. You follow standards. Your work is boring on purpose because boring means defensible. Evan loved that about me at first. He told people I was the steady one. When we hosted friends, he'd put a hand on my shoulder like I was part of his success story. He talked big about real estate being the best ladder in America, about how smart people didn't work harder, they worked smarter. He was charismatic in that clean, professional way. He could make a stranger feel like they were in on something. When we bought the house outside Denver, we didn't have much. We scraped together a down payment and got a loan that made my stomach twist when I read the monthly number. Evan kept saying it would be fine because he was moving up. I kept saying we should wait another year. He said waiting was how people stayed stuck. I still remembered signing those papers at the title office. The room too cold, the table too small, the pen chain dragging across the wood. I remembered how Evan squeezed my hand and whispered, "We're doing it." I believed him. I wanted to. For a while, it was good. We painted walls on weekends. We argued over light fixtures. We drank cheap champagne sitting on the bare floor of the living room, laughing at how echoey the house sounded without furniture. There was a softness then, a sense that we were building something that belonged to both of us. Then the years started stacking up. His promotions came with longer hours and more travel. My work shifted to mostly remote after the pandemic changed everything, and I was home more, alone more. Evan started talking about money in a different tone, like it wasn't a shared resource but a scoreboard. He began saying, "My income and your income," instead of ours. The hardest part, the part I almost never said out loud, was that the house stayed full but our life felt empty. We didn't have kids. Not because we didn't try. At first we said we were waiting until things were stable. Then, stable kept moving, like a finish line you never reach. When we finally tried, it was doctor visits and lab work and quiet appointments that felt like shame. The kind of waiting rooms where you avoid eye contact with anyone who might recognize you. Evan came with me to the first appointment. He held my hand. He asked questions. After that, he started finding reasons he couldn't make it. A meeting ran late. A client dinner. A crisis at work. I learned how to sit alone in those sterile rooms and smile at the nurses like it didn't matter. At some point, the trying stopped. There wasn't a conversation where we agreed to stop. It just faded away. The way intimacy fades when you're always tired and always busy and always telling yourself you'll reconnect later. Later never came. I'd been telling myself that what we had was still marriage, just a quieter version. We shared a bed. We shared groceries. We shared a roof. We joked occasionally. We went to family events and acted like a normal couple. Sometimes I'd catch Evan watching me from across the room, and for a second I'd think he still saw me. But lately, he felt like a man passing through my life, not living it. That day, I worked as if nothing was wrong. I answered emails, adjusted schedules, reviewed comps for a townhouse appraisal in Lakewood. I kept my voice professional, my messages polite. My hands didn't shake, but my mind kept circling the same thought. Someone logged into my account at 11:47 p.m. I checked the access logs again at lunch. The timestamp didn't change. The login came from our home IP address. It wasn't some random hacker in another state. It was inside my house. By mid-afternoon, I called Maya. Maya and I met years ago in an appraisal training course held in a beige conference room at a community college. We'd bonded over bad coffee and the instructor's jokes that never landed. She was blunt in a way I admired. She didn't soften the truth to make people comfortable. When she answered, her background noise sounded like traffic. "Lauren?" she said. "What's up? You never call during the day. I need to ask you something," I said, keeping my voice low even though I was alone. "If someone uses your credentials to generate a report and attaches your license number, what happens?" There was a pause, like she could hear the seriousness in the question. "Depends," she said. "If it's a mistake, you fix it. If it's intentional, you're talking about fraud. And if it touches lending, you're talking about a nightmare." My mouth went dry. "What if it's from your own house?" I asked. Another pause. "Are you saying someone in your home logged in as you?" "I found printed reports," I said. "I didn't create them." Maya didn't ask me if I was sure. She didn't laugh. She didn't try to calm me down with platitudes. "Do not ignore that," she said, her voice sharper now. "You need to document everything. Screenshots, logs, dates. Don't confront anyone until you understand what you're looking at, because if it gets investigated and you look like you helped or covered it up, you'll be dragged right into it." I sat back in my chair and stared at the corner of my desk where my stapler sat. The ordinary objects in my office suddenly felt strange, like props in a life that wasn't mine anymore. "What if it's my husband?" I asked quietly. Maya exhaled. "Then he's not just lying to you," she said. "He's risking your license. He's risking your future. People don't do that by accident. If you asked." After we hung up, I didn't move for a long time. I kept replaying her words. People don't do that by accident. I wanted to argue. I wanted to believe there was a benign explanation. Evan was careless sometimes. He mixed up documents. He forgot passwords. But he wasn't stupid. He wasn't the kind of man who accidentally printed fake appraisal reports with my license number on them. That evening, when he got home, he walked in with the energy of someone who expected the world to revolve around his stress. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door and sighed dramatically. "Long day," he said. I looked up from the couch. "Yeah?" He kicked off his shoes and loosened his tie like he was in a commercial for exhaustion. "The firm's pushing timelines. Everyone wants everything yesterday. It's like herding cats." I nodded, forcing my face into something neutral. "Do you want dinner?" He waved a hand. "Just something quick." I got up and went to the kitchen. I moved through the motions, pulling chicken from the fridge, heating a pan, chopping onions because my hands needed a task. Evan stood at the counter, scrolling on his phone, the screen angled away from me. At one point, he said, casually, "Hey, did you print anything this morning?" My knife stopped mid-slice. I didn't look at him. "Why?" "No reason," he said quickly. "I thought I heard the printer earlier." I stared at the onion. My eyes stung, but not from the onion. "I didn't print anything," I said. He murmured, like it was nothing. Maybe it was a glitch. A glitch. The word landed in my stomach like a rock. He said it too smoothly, too prepared. He wasn't asking because he was curious. He was checking what I knew. I kept my voice steady. "Maybe." We ate at the kitchen table. Evan talked about a new development project, about investors, about some guy named Brent who didn't understand numbers. He laughed at his own jokes. Every time he looked down at his phone, I watched his face instead of the screen. His jaw tightened when he read certain messages. His eyebrows lifted slightly, almost pleased. At others, he seemed alive in those moments in a way he wasn't with me. After dinner, he went upstairs to take a shower. The water ran for a long time. I sat on the couch listening, my heart beating hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. When the shower shut off, I waited until I heard him move into the bedroom. Then I stood up and walked down the hall to my office. I opened my desk drawer and took out the printed reports. The paper was already slightly bent from being folded, like something handled too often. I set them on my desk, turned on my laptop, and pulled up the access log again. Is 11:30 p.m. My username, home IP. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't march upstairs and demand an explanation. I stared at the numbers until they felt like a countdown. Then I opened a fresh document, titled it with the date, and started writing down everything I knew, minute by minute, detail by detail, because somewhere deep inside me, a colder voice had started speaking. If someone wanted to use my name, they were going to learn what it cost. The next few days felt like living inside a house with a hidden leak. Everything looked fine from the outside, but I could hear the drip in the walls, steady and patient, wearing away at something I couldn't see yet. Evan went to work, came home late, complained about timelines, kissed me on the cheek the way you kiss a relative. I answered emails, drove to site visits, wore my polite voice like armor, and in between, I watched. I had never thought of myself as someone who snooped. I didn't go through phones. I didn't read private emails. I believed that if you had to do those things, the relationship was already broken. But now it wasn't curiosity pushing me. It was survival. On Thursday morning, I woke up at 5:58 and lay still, listening. Evan's breathing was even. The room smelled faintly of his deodorant and the laundry detergent I bought in bulk because it was cheaper. I watched the digital clock on the nightstand roll to 6, then 6:1. My stomach was tight, like I was waiting for a sound that would confirm what I already suspected. He didn't move. Not yet. When I got up, I didn't touch my laptop. I went downstairs, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with my phone face down beside my mug. The house was quiet in that early way, the kind of quiet where you can hear the refrigerator cycle on and off. At 6:12, the same time as Tuesday, I heard the printer click. My hand stayed on the mug. I didn't jump this time. I didn't even look toward the hall. I just listened. One page, then another. At 6:14, I stood and walked down the hall. The output tray held 2 fresh sheets. I picked them up carefully, as if they might smear like wet ink. Again. My license number at the bottom. Again. A report I did not make. This time the address was in Thornton. A ranch house, 4 bedrooms. A valuation that made no sense based on the comps listed. I turned the page and my throat tightened. The comparable sales included one property that had sold 3 months ago for a number I remembered because I'd appraised that exact street. The sale price in the report was higher than reality, not by a small amount, by a clean, rounded number that felt intentional. My skin went cold. It wasn't just someone using my credentials. It was someone changing the facts. I set the pages on my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the official property records for the comparable sale. The real number was right there, public and undeniable. The report's number was a lie. I looked at the clock on my screen. 6:16. I thought of Maya's voice. Do not ignore that. I did what appraisers do when something doesn't line up. I built a file. I created a folder on an external drive and titled it simply, Logs. Inside it, I saved screenshots of the access history. I saved copies of the printed reports. I printed the public record pages and stapled them behind my notes, like an old-fashioned case file. The act of organizing it made my breathing slow down, made my mind sharper. It was something concrete to hold on to while my marriage turned slippery. That afternoon, I had a scheduled exterior inspection in Golden. The homeowner was an older man with a careful smile. The kind of person who kept his lawn edged perfectly. I took photos, measured, asked routine questions. My voice didn't shake once. When I got back into my car, my hands shook so hard I had to sit for a minute with my palms flat on the steering wheel until they stopped. On the drive home, I called Maya again. I'm getting new reports printing on their own, I said. Same time? She asked immediately. Yes. And the numbers? Wrong, I said. Not sloppy wrong. Changed wrong. Maya didn't hesitate. Lauren, if he's doing this, he's doing it for a reason. He's using your credibility to prop up something. Do you know what he's working on? He says development timelines. I answered. Investors. His firm. Okay, she said. Then you need to assume this is bigger than your house. Bigger than your marriage. It could be tied to loans. Refinancing. Investor packets. If your name is on any of that, you could lose your license even if you didn't touch it. My mouth tasted metallic. What do I do? You keep documenting, she said. And you check your email. Every folder. Every sent message. If he's sending anything out under your name, you need to know. When I got home, Evan's car wasn't in the driveway. I walked inside, locked the door behind me, out of habit, and then paused. The house smelled like the lemon cleaner I'd used the day before. The porch light was on, though it was still daylight, which Evan sometimes did when he came in and out. Like he didn't notice small things. I went straight to my office. My laptop was exactly where I'd left it, but the mouse was angled differently. I stared at it for a second. It was a tiny thing, the kind of detail most people wouldn't even register. But once you start looking, your mind becomes a ledger. Every deviation matters. I opened my email and searched my sent folder for keywords. Appraisal. Report. Valuation. License. Nothing obvious. Then I searched for addresses. Aurora. Thornton. The names of streets I'd seen on the printed pages. One result popped up from 2 weeks ago. A draft email, never sent, titled Updated Figures. My stomach tightened. The email body was short. A few lines about attaching revised numbers. A tone that didn't sound like me. No greeting, no sign-off. The attachment was gone, but the email still showed it had been opened at 12:03 a.m. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the trackpad. My heart beat so hard my ears buzzed. I checked the last accessed information. Same home IP address. I closed my laptop slowly, like it might explode if I moved too fast. Upstairs, I heard the garage door open, the rumble of Evan's car pulling in. The door shutting, footsteps on the stairs. I stood, walked into the kitchen, and forced my face into something neutral just as he came in. He looked tired, but there was a restless energy in him too, like he was carrying a secret that made him feel powerful. Hey, he said, dropping his briefcase by the counter. Hey, I replied. He opened the fridge, stared inside like he didn't recognize any of the food. We need to talk about something, he said, still looking into the fridge. My throat tightened. About what? He shut the fridge and leaned back against the counter. The mortgage, he said, like it was casual. Like it was a normal conversation to have at 5 in the afternoon. The mortgage? I repeated. Rates are shifting, he said. We should refinance. Lock in something better before things get weird. I kept my voice steady. We refinanced 2 years ago. Voting. We refinanced 2 years ago. That was then, he said, waving his hand. This would be smart. We could pull a little equity too, just to have flexibility. The words landed with weight. Pull equity. I don't want to pull equity, I said carefully. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Lauren, it's our house. 8. Our house. The phrase sounded rehearsed. I want to see the numbers, I said. Of course, he said quickly. I'll show you. It's not a big deal. I watched him as he spoke. Watched the way his hands moved too much. Watched the way he avoided my eyes for half a second when he said, not a big deal. My body reacted before my mind caught up. My palms went damp. My shoulders tightened. That night, after dinner, Evan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He turned the screen slightly away from me as he clicked through documents. He showed me a spreadsheet with interest rates and projected payments. Everything looked neat, professional, reasonable. This is just planning, he said. We don't have to do anything tomorrow. I leaned forward. Who's the lender? He hesitated, just a beat. I nodded slowly. Send me the details, I said. I want everything in writing. His jaw tightened. Sure. Dej. After he went upstairs, I stayed at the table and stared at the faint ring his glass had left on the wood. I could still smell the detergent from the dish towel in my hands. My breathing felt shallow, like my lungs didn't want to take up too much space. I went into my office and pulled the printed reports from the drawer. Aurora. Thornton. Now a refinance conversation out of nowhere. I saw the shape of it forming, like a puzzle where the picture becomes clear right before you wish you could stop looking. I opened my laptop and checked my credit monitoring account. It was something I'd set up years ago after a friend's identity got stolen. I almost never looked at it. There, on the screen, was a notification dated 2 days earlier. A soft credit inquiry from a mortgage brokerage I'd never heard of. My stomach dropped so fast I had to grab the edge of my desk to steady myself. The room felt suddenly too bright, too sharp. I reread the line twice to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding it. Someone had already started. Someone had already used my name. Upstairs, Evan's shower turned on. Water thundered against tile. The sound filled the house like a warning. I sat in my chair and stared at the inquiry notice until the letters blurred. I didn't know yet how far this went. I didn't know how many documents existed with my license number at the bottom. I didn't know what Evan had promised to investors or lenders or anyone else. But I knew one thing, with a clarity that made my hands stop shaking. This wasn't just betrayal. This was theft wearing my marriage like a mask. After the credit inquiry, I stopped sleeping in full nights. I would drift off for an hour, wake up, stare at the ceiling, then check the time like it could explain what was happening. Evan slept like nothing in the world had changed. He could roll over, pull the blanket higher, and disappear into that heavy, careless breathing that used to comfort me. Now it made my stomach turn. It sounded like someone resting comfortably in a house they'd already taken from me. The next day, I called the mortgage brokerage listed on the inquiry. I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot because I didn't trust myself to speak from inside my own kitchen. The woman who answered sounded cheerful, like she'd never delivered bad news in her life. Hi, I said. I'm calling about a credit inquiry on my file from your company. I didn't authorize it. There was a pause while she typed. I heard clicking, a soft hum in the background. Okay, she said finally. I do see an inquiry. It was tied to a refinance pre-qualification. I didn't request that, I repeated. Are you the borrower? She asked. Yes. Lauren Mitchell. Okay, she said again, her voice shifting slightly. The request came through a third-party referral. Let me check the notes. My fingers tightened around the phone. I stared at the steering wheel logo like it could keep me grounded. I'm seeing it was initiated by Evan Mitchell, she said. Spouse. Same address. The dist view. My throat went dry. She hesitated. He said he was authorized, she answered. Careful. But I understand your concern. If you didn't consent, we can flag the file and stop any processing. I want it stopped, I said. Okay, she replied quickly. I'll mark it as withdrawn due to lack of authorization. Can you email me confirmation? I asked. Of course. I ended the call and sat in silence. The grocery store sign outside blinked in the sunlight. People pushed carts across the lot, laughing, talking, living normal lives. I felt like I was watching them from behind glass. Evan didn't just have secrets. He had paperwork moving through systems that assumed he spoke for me. That night, I didn't say anything. He talked about his day like he always did, fast and surface level, leaving out anything that mattered. He ate, scrolled, answered a text, smiled at something on the screen, and then tried to kiss me on the forehead as if that gesture could cover everything. I leaned back slightly. Just an inch. He didn't react, but his eyes flicked to mine for a split second. "You're tense lately," he said. "Work getting to you?" "Deadlines," I said, keeping my voice even. "It's busy." He nodded like that made sense. He liked explanations that didn't involve him. After he went upstairs, I returned to my office and pulled up my software's security settings. I changed my password to something Evan couldn't guess. I enabled every two-factor option available. I logged out of every device. Then I waited to see what would happen. The next morning at 6:12, the printer did not click. For a moment, I felt a strange relief, like maybe I'd just fixed a problem. If the printing stopped the moment I changed my password, it meant the person doing it had been using my actual login. It wasn't a glitch. It was access. That afternoon, I checked my access logs again. There were multiple failed login attempts overnight. 3 at 11:47, 2 at 1:03, 1 at 2:18, all from our home IP address. Someone had been trying to get back in. My hands trembled as I took screenshots and saved them. I didn't feel like I was gathering evidence against a stranger anymore. I was collecting proof about a man whose socks were in my laundry basket, whose hair was in my shower drain, whose fingerprints were on every surface of this house. When Evan came home that evening, his mood was sharper than usual. He didn't complain about traffic or meetings. He walked in, dropped his keys, and went straight to the fridge as if he needed something immediately. "Did you do something with the printer?" he asked without turning around. My heartbeat jumped, but my face stayed still. "No," I said. "Why?" "It's been acting weird," he muttered. "Not connecting." "I haven't touched it," I said. He shut the fridge and finally looked at me. His eyes narrowed slightly, like he was measuring my answer. "Okay," he said. "Just checking." He walked past me toward the office hallway, my stomach clenched. I stayed where I was, listening as he opened the office door. Then the soft beep of my laptop as it woke up. I didn't move. A few minutes later, he came back out, holding his phone. "Your laptop wasn't asleep," he said casually. "I thought you always lock it." "I must have forgotten," I replied. He watched me for a second too long, then shrugged. "Be careful," he said. "You've got sensitive stuff." "Sensitive stuff." The words felt like a joke he didn't realize I could hear. He went upstairs, leaving me in the kitchen with my hands gripping the edge of the counter. That was when I understood something important. Evan wasn't only doing this behind my back, he was actively checking what I knew. He was adjusting his behavior based on my reactions. He wasn't panicking. Not yet, but he was paying attention. The next day, I drove to Maya's office during lunch. She worked out of a small suite in a plain building off a busy road, the kind of place with faded landscaping and a lot of parked trucks. When I walked in, she took one look at my face and didn't bother with small talk. "Okay," she said. "Tell me everything." We sat at her small conference table with paper spread out like we were building a map. I showed her the printed reports, the altered comp numbers, the access logs, the credit inquiry email confirmation from the brokerage. Maya's mouth tightened as she read. "This is bad," she said finally. "I know," I said. "No?" she corrected. "This is not just, my husband lied. This is, my husband is committing financial crimes using my credentials." I stared at the table, at the grain of the wood, at the tiny scratch marks near the edge. "What if I confront him?" I asked. "Then he'll deny it," she said immediately. "Or he'll say you're overreacting, or he'll try to scare you. And the second he knows you're serious, he'll destroy whatever trail he can." I swallowed. "So what do I do?" Maya leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You need leverage," she said. "Something he can't deny. Something time-stamped and traceable." "Like what?" I asked. "Like a controlled file," she said. "A decoy. something you create on purpose to see if he uses it. The idea made my stomach twist. Isn't that risky? It's risky if you make it usable, she said. But if you build it carefully, it's just a marker. Proof that someone accessed your system. Proof they exported something. Proof they're using your name. I felt my pulse in my throat. I hate that this is my life, I said quietly. Maya's expression softened just a fraction. I know, she said, but you're still in time. The worst thing you can do is freeze. On the drive home, I kept thinking about the phrase, still in time. It sounded like a warning and a promise at the same time. I didn't know how far Evan had already gone, but I could feel the speed of it now, the way things moved once money got involved. Paper became leverage. Leverage became pressure. Pressure became decisions that didn't care who they crushed. That evening, Evan brought up the refinance again while we were eating. I talked to a lender, he said, chewing quickly. I told you I don't want to pull equity, I said. He sighed like I was being childish. Lauren, it's not like we're taking out a second mortgage for fun. This is strategy. Strategy for what? I asked. He hesitated, just enough to make my skin prickle. For flexibility, he said again. For opportunities. Opportunities like what? His eyes hardened. Why are you interrogating me? Because my name is being used, I wanted to say. Because there are fake reports printing in our hallway. Because you ran my credit without my consent. Instead, I kept my voice calm. I want to understand, I said. It's our house. He stared at me for a long moment, then set his fork down. I'm trying to do what's best for us, he said, his tone turning sharp. You always assume the worst. I felt heat rise in my face, but I swallowed it. I'm not assuming anything, I said. I'm asking questions. He leaned back and looked away, jaw tight. Fine, he said. If you don't trust me, we won't do it. The words were meant to make me feel guilty, to make me back down, to make me apologize for wanting to know what was happening with my own life. I'd apologized for that kind of thing before, for being difficult, for being anxious, for wanting basic respect. I didn't apologize this time. After dinner, Evan went upstairs early. I waited until I heard the shower run, then the bedroom door close. I sat at my desk in the quiet house, the external drive plugged in, my notes spread out in front of me. I opened a new file and stared at the blank screen. A controlled file, Maya had said. A marker. I felt my heart pounding, felt the dryness in my mouth, felt the strange steadiness in my hands as I typed a simple address. A fake client name. A set of numbers that looked believable at first glance. I wasn't creating a real appraisal. I was creating a lure, something that would only matter if someone tried to use it. When I saved it, I named it in a way that would catch Evan's eye. Updated. Valuation. Final. Then I leaned back in my chair and listened to the house. The walls didn't creak. The pipes didn't rattle. Nothing dramatic happened. It was just silence and a file sitting on my hard drive, waiting. Upstairs, Evan shifted in bed. I heard the faint sound of his phone buzzing, then stopping. I stared at my screen and realized I was no longer waiting to find out if something was wrong. I was waiting to see how far he would go. The file sat there for 2 days without moving, and those 2 days felt longer than any week I could remember. I went through my normal routines with a kind of stiff calm, the way you move when you're carrying a glass of water filled to the rim. I drove to inspections, took photos, measured rooms, smiled politely at homeowners who offered bottled water. I came home, made dinner, listened to Evan talk about his work like it was the only thing that mattered in the world. I nodded at the right moments, laughed when he wanted me to, and kept my eyes open. Every night before bed, I checked the metadata on the decoy file. The last opened timestamp stayed the same. It was like a trap that hadn't been touched. Part of me wanted it to stay that way, wanted to believe that maybe Maya had been wrong, that maybe all of this had a simple explanation I hadn't found yet. But another part of me, the part that had already accepted the truth, felt the weighting as tension under my skin. On the third night, Evan came home later than usual. It was after 10. I was already in my pajamas, sitting on the couch with a blanket over my legs, and the TV muted. The house lights were low. Outside, the street was quiet, except for a dog barking somewhere down the block. The front door opened and Evan stepped in, loosening his tie, his hair slightly damp as if he'd run his hands through it too many times. Sorry, he said quickly, like he was delivering a line. Things ran long. I looked at him. Where were you? He blinked, almost startled by the question. Then he shrugged. Office. Then a drink with Brent. Nothing crazy. He walked toward the kitchen, opened a cabinet, took out a glass, and filled it with water. His hand shook slightly as he lifted it to his mouth. It was a small thing, but I saw it. His eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward my office door, then back to me. You still up? He asked. I couldn't sleep, I said. He nodded, took another sip. You should, he said. Big day tomorrow, right? I watched him as he spoke. The words sounded caring, but his tone was impatient. Like he wanted me to disappear into bed so he could breathe again. I'll go soon, I said. He leaned against the counter and looked at his phone. The screen lit up his face in pale blue. He smiled at something, then quickly wiped the expression away when he noticed me watching. What? I asked softly. Nothing, he said too fast. Just work. He went upstairs a few minutes later. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close and his footsteps settle. Then I stood up, my blanket sliding to the floor, and walked down the hall to my office. The door was slightly ajar. I knew I'd closed it earlier. My breath caught in my throat. I stood still for a moment, listening. The house was quiet. No footsteps, no voices, only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant rush of air from the heating vent. I pushed the door open. My laptop lid was up. The screen was black, but the small light on the side pulsed softly, like it had recently been used. My chair was pulled out an inch farther than I'd left it. The mouse was angled toward the edge of the desk. I sat down slowly, my hands steady despite the pounding in my chest. I touched the trackpad. The screen woke up and asked for my password. That was new. I'd set it to lock on sleep. Someone had been here. I entered my password and opened the file folder. My eyes went straight to the decoy file. I clicked Properties. Last opened. 10:37 p.m. My stomach dropped. My ears rang. I stared at the timestamp as if it might change if I looked long enough. 10:37 p.m. Evan had just walked in at 10. He'd been at the office and having a drink. Yet the file was opened from inside my laptop at 10:37, from inside my house. I checked the access log. There it was. Login attempt. Successful. Then file opened. Then a file export event. My software had an audit trail feature I'd never cared much about until now. It recorded actions like saving, printing, exporting, exported to PDF at 10:38 p.m. A cold sweat broke out along my back. I clicked the recent files list. The decoy was there. Another file was there too, one of my real ongoing appraisals, opened right after. I felt the urge to vomit. I didn't move for a minute. I just sat there, my fingers resting on the desk, my eyes on the screen, my brain trying to keep up with what my body already understood. Then I started taking screenshots, timestamps, logs, export records. I saved them to the external drive, and then to a cloud folder I created under a name Evan would never click. I emailed copies to myself at an account he didn't know existed. When I finished, my hands were shaking hard enough that I had to grip the edge of the desk. I went to the printer and opened the tray. Legal paper was stacked inside, crisp and clean. I pulled out a handful and held it in my hands. It felt thick and official. Evan had bought it for a reason. He'd stocked it like you stock ammunition. I put the paper back, closed the tray, and stood there in the hallway, breathing slowly. Upstairs, Evan snored softly. The sound made something inside me go numb. The next morning, he acted normal. That was the strangest part. He made eggs, whistled quietly, talked about the weather, like a man who hadn't just crossed a line that could destroy my career. He slid his phone into his pocket when I walked by. He kissed my cheek and said, "Love you," in the same casual voice he used when he said, "Drive safe." Drive safe. I watched him leave through the window. His car backed out of the driveway, taillights glowing red in the early light. When he turned the corner, I went back to my office and opened my credit monitoring account again. There was a new alert, a hard inquiry this time. My breath stopped. The lender name matched the mortgage brokerage I'd called. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. Hard inquiry. That meant someone had moved past pre-qualification. Someone had pushed forward. I called the brokerage immediately. A different person answered this time, a man with a too cheerful voice. "Hi," I said, keeping my tone controlled. "I called earlier this week to stop a refinance file because it was initiated without my consent. I have a new hard inquiry on my credit. I need to know why." There was typing, then a pause. "I see the file," he said. "It looks like we received updated documentation last night." My stomach clenched. "Updated documentation from who?" "From your spouse," he said. "What documentation?" I asked. "An appraisal report," he replied, "and some income verification." My skin went cold. "What appraisal report?" I asked, already knowing. He hesitated. "It's an appraisal under your name," he said. "License number matches." I closed my eyes for a second. The decoy file. The export. Evan had sent it. "That report is not valid," I said, my voice sharper now. "It was not conducted. It was not authorized. It is fraudulent." The man's tone shifted immediately. "Ma'am, Listen to me," I said. "I am the licensed appraiser listed on that document. I did not produce it. I did not sign it. I did not consent to its use. I need you to lock the file, send me every document you have received, and note in your system that this is identity and license fraud." There was a long silence. Then he cleared his throat. "Okay," he said, suddenly cautious. "I'm going to escalate this to compliance. You'll receive an email." "I want it in writing," I said. "Today. Different one cent." "Yes," he said. When I ended the call, my hands were trembling. I pressed my palms against my thighs to stop them from shaking, but it didn't help. The house felt smaller, the air thick. I looked around at the kitchen, at the countertops we'd installed together, at the framed photo of us on the wall from a trip to Maine years ago when we still smiled like we believed in each other. The house wasn't just where I lived. It was the asset Evan was trying to weaponize. He was using it as leverage, and he was willing to use my name as the tool. I drove to Maya's office without thinking. When she saw my face, she stood up immediately. "He used it," I said. He opened the decoy file, exported it, sent it to a lender. Maya's expression tightened. And now there's a hard inquiry," I said. "He's pushing the refinance through." Maya leaned forward. "Okay," she said. "You have proof. You have logs. You have lender confirmation. That's solid. Now you need to protect yourself." "I called compliance," I said. "They're sending documents." "Good," she replied. "Next step is making sure he can't forge anything else." "And Lauren!" She paused, her voice lower. "You need to assume he will get desperate." The word desperate made my stomach twist again. That evening, Evan came home earlier than usual. He walked in with a forced brightness, carrying a bouquet of grocery store flowers like he'd remembered a script. "Thought I'd surprise you," he said, holding them out. I stared at the flowers. Yellow daisies. Cheap cellophane. The kind of thing you grab on the way out when you know you've done something wrong. "They're nice," I said, taking them because it would have been suspicious not to. He watched my face closely, waiting for warmth. When he didn't get it, his smile tightened. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Just busy," I said. He nodded slowly, then stepped closer. "We should talk about the refinance," he said softly. I made some progress. I felt my heart hammer, but my voice stayed calm. "Send me the documents," I said. "I want to review everything." His eyes flickered. Just a small flicker, but I saw it. "Sure," he said. "No problem." Then he leaned in and kissed my forehead, lingering half a second too long, like he wanted to remind me of intimacy so I would forget the paperwork. As he walked away, I stood in the kitchen, holding those flowers, and realized something that made my skin go cold all over again. Evan wasn't only trying to refinance our house. He was trying to trap me inside it. That night, I arranged the yellow daisies in a glass jar because it was easier than throwing them away. They looked wrong on my kitchen counter, too bright and cheerful for what was happening in this house. Evan watched me from the doorway for a moment, then went upstairs, whistling softly like a man satisfied with himself. I waited until I heard the shower run. Then I went into my office and opened the email from the mortgage brokerage's compliance department. They'd sent a secure link with attachments and a short message that used careful corporate language, the kind meant to protect the company, not the person calling in panic. I downloaded everything. There it was, in black and white. A refinance application with our address at the top, Evan listed as primary borrower, Me listed as co-borrower. My social security number partially masked. My income listed higher than it actually was. And attached to the file, an appraisal report bearing my name and license number. The appraisal value was inflated. Not wildly, but enough to create extra equity on paper. Enough to justify cash out. Enough to make the loan look safe. Enough to get money out of our house without telling me. At the bottom of the report was an electronic signature. Mine. The signature looked like mine if you didn't know me. The swoop of the L, the slant to the right, but it wasn't the way I signed official documents. There were tiny differences, like someone had copied it from an old scan and traced it. It made my throat tighten with disgust. I stared at that forged signature until my eyes burned. Then I did something that felt strange and quiet and final. I opened a notebook and started a clean list. Date, time, document, action, proof. Every line was a nail in a coffin. The next morning, I left the house as if it was a normal Friday. Evan was already gone. The daisies sat on the counter, catching sunlight. The kitchen smelled faintly like coffee and dish soap. I walked out through the garage, got into my car, and drove to an attorney's office in downtown Denver. The receptionist gave me a clipboard and a plastic cup of water. I filled out my name, address, and reason for visit with a pen that had a chewed cap. Under reason, I wrote, identity misuse, fraud, marital assets. When the attorney came out, she was in her 40s, hair pulled back, sharp eyes. Her name was Karen Lopez. She shook my hand firmly and led me into a small office with a window overlooking a brick building. Tell me what's going on, she said, sitting down. I laid the printed documents on her desk like evidence in a trial. The forged appraisal report, the application, the logs, the compliance emails. My fingers trembled slightly as I pushed them toward her. She read quietly for a long time. The only sound was the ticking of a small clock on the wall. When she looked up, her expression had shifted from neutral to hard. This is serious, she said. I know, I replied. This is not just a marital dispute, she said. This is fraud. My stomach tightened. I don't want to ruin my own life by reporting this, I said. Karen's eyes didn't soften. You won't ruin your life, she said. He already tried to. The question is whether you protect yourself now or let him drag you down with him. I swallowed. What do I do? We start with protecting your identity and your license, she said. You document everything, which you've already done. You notify the licensing board as soon as we have a clean statement prepared. Because if they hear it from someone else first, it looks worse for you. The thought of the licensing board made my chest tighten. My license was my career. It was the thing I'd built with years of coursework and exams and stress and quiet pride. Losing it would mean starting over. At an age when starting over isn't romantic, it's terrifying. Karen leaned forward slightly. Lauren, she said, her voice lower. If he's forging your signature on appraisal documents, he's not going to stop. People who do this don't suddenly regain morals because you ask nicely. It's so. I stared at the desk. He's my husband, I whispered, as if that fact should mean something. Karen's expression stayed flat. He's your husband, she agreed. And he forged your signature anyway. When I left her office, the sunlight outside felt too bright. The city streets were busy, people walking with coffee cups, trucks rumbling past, the normal world continuing without noticing what was happening to me. I sat in my car and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned pale. My heart was beating fast, but underneath it, there was something else now. A steady, cold clarity. Back home, I didn't confront Evan. I didn't slam papers on the table. I didn't demand explanations. I did exactly what he expected me not to do. I became quiet. That afternoon, I froze my credit. I changed my banking passwords. I set up alerts on every account. I moved my important files, my license documents, past reports, tax records, onto an encrypted drive and stored it in a locked drawer at Maya's office. I updated my laptop security again. Then I created a new user profile on the computer that looked like a system admin profile, something Evan would likely ignore. I was building walls inside my own home. When Evan came home that evening, he was in a good mood. Too good. He kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted to go out for dinner. He suggested a place he knew I liked, a trendy spot with warm lighting and cocktails in short glasses. It was the kind of sudden effort that would have made me hopeful a year ago. Now it looked like a distraction. I'm tired, I said. Maybe tomorrow. His smile tightened. You've been tired a lot lately, he said. I've been busy, I replied. He studied me for a moment. You're not mad at me, are you? The question was almost innocent. I shook my head. No. Oh no. He nodded, satisfied, and went upstairs to change. 10 minutes later, I heard his phone ring. He answered in the bedroom, with the door half closed. His voice was low, quick. Yeah, he said. No, she doesn't know. Not like that. Then a pause. I'm handling it. Another pause. I'll send it tonight. I stood in the hallway, my feet planted on the hardwood floor, the air cool against my skin. I didn't breathe loudly. I didn't move. I listened until his voice faded, and he hung up. She doesn't know. Not like that. The words burned in my chest. When he came back downstairs, his face was smooth again. He made himself a drink, sat on the couch, and turned on a show we used to watch together. He laughed at a scene. He looked at me like he wanted me to join him in pretending. I sat in the armchair across from him and watched the TV without hearing it. My mind kept replaying his sentence. Not like that. That meant there was something else. Something beyond the refinance, beyond the fake appraisals. Something I hadn't uncovered yet. At 11, Evan stood up and stretched. I'm going to do a little work, he said, holding his laptop. Just emails. Okay, I said. He went into the office down the hall, the one he used sometimes when he wanted privacy. He closed the door. I waited 5 minutes. Then I quietly walked upstairs and stood outside our bedroom door. I could see his car keys on the dresser, his wallet, his phone charger. Then I looked at my nightstand. Evan's phone wasn't there. He'd taken it with him into the office. I walked back downstairs and sat at the kitchen table, my hands folded, listening. I heard the soft tapping of keys. The faint whir of the printer. One page, then another. My heart hammered, but I didn't move. Not yet. When the office door opened and Evan stepped out, he was holding a small stack of papers. He didn't see me at first because I was in the shadow of the kitchen, the overhead light off. He froze when he noticed me. Oh, he said, too loudly. I didn't know you were still up. I couldn't sleep, I said calmly. He smiled, but the smile looked brittle. Just finishing something, he said, glancing down at the papers in his hand. What is it? I asked. Just work stuff, he said. I nodded slowly. You printed it here? He shrugged. Yeah, the office printer is down. It's not a big deal. I watched him walk past me, up the stairs, papers tucked against his chest like something he didn't want me to see. My mouth went dry. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close. Then I walked down the hall to my printer. The output tray was empty, but the light was still blinking. I stood there in the hallway, the printer's faint warmth still in the plastic. Evan had printed something and carried it upstairs like it was fragile. He hadn't shredded anything. He hadn't hidden it well. He wasn't being careful anymore. He was being fast. And fast meant something was closing in. I went back into my office and checked my access logs again. There it was. Another login attempt at 10:58. Successful. Another export event at 11:03. This time, the file exported was not my decoy. It was a real appraisal. A current one. My throat tightened with panic and anger. I took screenshots, saved them, emailed them. My hands moved quickly now, practiced. This wasn't my first time capturing proof. It was becoming routine, and that realization made me feel sick. Then I did the one thing that felt like breathing room. I opened a new document and typed a single sentence at the top, bold and plain. If he's willing to forge my signature, he's willing to forge my life. I stared at the sentence until the letters stopped wobbling. Somewhere inside me, the last soft part that still wanted to believe in my marriage finally went silent. In its place was something colder, something determined. I wasn't going to confront him and hope he confessed. I was going to let him hang himself with the paperwork he loved so much. And when the time came, the cost wouldn't be paid by me. By the time Saturday morning arrived, I had two lives running side by side. One was the life Evan could see. Coffee, laundry, polite conversation. The wife who asked nothing and complained about nothing. The other was the life I kept hidden in files and timestamps. In phone calls made from parking lots. In screenshots saved twice. In the quiet discipline of not reacting when my whole body wanted to explode. Evan slept late on Saturdays. Like he deserved it. He would stay in bed scrolling his phone, laughing at something without sharing it, then come downstairs hungry and restless. That morning, I was already up. I wore leggings and an old sweatshirt and moved around the kitchen like it was an ordinary day. I made pancakes because that was a habit from earlier years, back when weekends still felt like ours. Evan came down at 9, rubbing his face. "Smells good," he said, leaning in to kiss me. I turned my head just enough that his lips landed on my hair instead of my cheek. He didn't mention it. He sat down, ate, talked about a football game he wanted to watch, complained about a coworker who didn't get the hustle. I listened, smiled at the right moments, kept my hands busy with dishes. When he went into the living room to turn on the TV, I rinsed the last plate and stared at the yellow daisies on the counter. They were starting to droop at the edges. The water in the jar was cloudy. That felt right. Around noon, Evan said he needed to go into the office for a couple hours. He said it the way he always did lately, like it was a harmless fact, like my opinion didn't matter. He grabbed his keys, checked his phone, and paused in the doorway. "You sure you're okay?" he asked again, too casually. "I'm fine," I said. He nodded, satisfied, and left. The moment his car backed out of the driveway, I went to my office and locked the door. I didn't usually lock it. That tiny click of the lock sliding into place made my stomach tighten, like I was acknowledging something I couldn't undo. I called Maya first. "He's going back in today," I said. Maya didn't ask how I knew. "I'm ready," I said, though my hands were cold. "Remember," she said, "this is proof, not punishment. You're not creating harm. You're creating clarity." Clarity. That was the word I needed. Not revenge, not drama. Clarity that could stand up in a licensing hearing, in a compliance report, in a courtroom if it came to that. After I hung up, I opened my laptop under the hidden admin profile I'd created. A small digital fingerprint that would be invisible to someone rushing, but undeniable if the document surfaced somewhere it didn't belong. I created a new decoy appraisal report template, but not like the first one. The first one had been a lure to confirm access. This one was built to track movement. I chose a fake subject property in a real neighborhood. A place Evan would recognize. A home type that would fit his world. A new build in a fast-growing subdivision. The kind of property his firm loved to flip into investor language. I filled in details that looked legitimate. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, finished basement. I used comps that were real but mismatched, just enough to be wrong if someone tried to submit it. I embedded a unique phrase in an innocuous section, buried inside a paragraph no one reads carefully. Not a dramatic code, just a sentence that sounded like me but wasn't something I'd ever naturally write. I also saved the document with a tiny formatting flaw that would carry through any export. A double space after a period in one specific line. A small mistake I could later point to and say, "That's mine. That's the marker. That's the proof." Then, I did the most important part. I created 2 versions of the file. One version I saved in my normal work folder, labeled like something Evan would want. Investor, packet, appraisal, final. The other version I saved in a separate folder with a similar name, but it contained different hidden markers. If one version moved, I would know exactly which path he took to get it. My heart beat hard as I worked. Not because I was afraid of the computer, but because every click felt like stepping deeper into a reality where my husband was my adversary. The room was quiet. The window showed a bright Colorado afternoon. A neighbor's sprinkler hissed. It was such a normal sound that it made me feel briefly insane. Like how could the world keep watering lawns while my life cracked open? When I finished, I sat back and stared at the file names on my screen. They looked harmless. Professional. They looked like something any appraiser might have. That was the point. Evan didn't need to see a trap. He just needed to see an opportunity. Before I shut the laptop, I set up an alert on my phone tied to my file access logs. If my account was accessed, I would get a notification. I'd never done that before. It felt like putting a motion sensor on my own marriage. At 3, Evan texted, "Running late. Still at work." I replied, "Okay." At 5, he texted again. "Might grab dinner out with the guys." I replied, "Have fun." My fingers didn't shake. If anything, my calm felt unnatural. Like my body had learned that emotions were expensive and I needed to conserve them. At 7, Evan came home. He looked energized, not tired, like someone who'd had a good day. He carried a bag of takeout and a bottle of wine. "I thought we could have a nice night," he he said, setting everything on the counter. How thoughtful, I said. He opened the wine, poured 2 glasses, and handed me one. To us, he said with a smile that was almost convincing. I lifted the glass and took a small sip. The wine tasted sharp. He told stories about his coworkers, about a deal that might close soon, about how he was positioning himself for a bigger role. The words sounded like a pitch deck. He sounded like a man practicing a future where I was an accessory, not a partner. After dinner, he kissed my shoulder, then walked toward the office hallway. I just have to send a couple things, he said. Sure, I replied, keeping my voice light. He disappeared into my office. My throat tightened. I stayed at the kitchen table, hands folded, listening. The chair creaked. The mouse clicked. A low hum from the computer fan. My phone lay face up beside my plate, silent for a moment. Then it vibrated softly. Access alert. Login detected. My pulse jumped. I didn't move. I didn't rush down the hall. I stayed where I was, breathing shallowly, letting him believe he was alone. A few minutes later, my phone vibrated again. File opened. Investor, packet, appraisal. Final. My stomach clenched so hard it hurt. It wasn't just the fact that he opened it. It was the ease of it. The casualness. Like he'd done this before. Like my work was a tool he could reach for whenever it suited him. I heard the printer whir. Then stop. One page, then another. The sound was muffled through the walls, but unmistakable. Evan emerged 10 minutes later with his laptop tucked under his arm. Everything good? He asked, stepping into the kitchen with a relaxed smile. Yeah, I said. You done? Yep, he replied, taking his wine glass. Just emails. He drank, watched me over the rim of the glass, then said, You've been pretty easy lately. I smiled faintly. Maybe I'm learning, I said. He chuckled, like he liked that answer, like he thought he'd trained me. When he went upstairs, I waited until I heard the bedroom door close. Then I walked into my office. The chair was pulled out. My laptop was still warm. The printer tray held 2 printed pages, with my decoy report header visible at the top. I didn't touch them yet. I went straight to the access log on my screen. There it was. Export to PDF. Attachment created. Email client opened. My skin went cold as I clicked the email activity history. A message had been sent from my account. Sent at sept quarant 6 p.m. Subject line. Updated figures attached. Recipient. An email address I didn't recognize, but the domain belonged to a private lending group. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This wasn't just him poking around. He had sent a fraudulent appraisal under my name to someone who would use it to move real money. I took screenshots of everything. The sent email, the timestamp, the attachment name, the access log. Then I did something I hadn't expected. I printed the sent email confirmation page and held it in my hands. The paper felt heavier than paper should feel. It wasn't just ink and fiber. It was proof that the man sleeping upstairs was willing to burn my career, my identity, and our home to get what he wanted. I stood there in the office, the house quiet around me, and realized the trap had worked exactly as planned. But the moment didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing on the edge of something collapsing, knowing you didn't push it, but you're going to be the one who has to survive the fall. By Sunday morning, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Evan moved through it with that same confident ease, pouring coffee, flipping channels, acting like he hadn't sat at my desk the night before, and sent my name into someone else's hands. I watched him from across the kitchen as he buttered toast, his shoulders relaxed, his phone face down on the counter like it was a habit, not a warning. I kept my voice normal. I asked if he wanted to go to Home Depot later because the porch light had been flickering. I nodded when he said, maybe. I smiled when he joked about how I always noticed little things. He didn't know that little things were all I could see now. After he left for the gym, I sat at my desk and opened the email he'd sent. The attachment name was still there, stamped with the time. I forwarded the message, including full headers, to the compliance officer at the brokerage and to a contact Karen Lopez had given me, a fraud investigator who worked with lenders. My finger hovered over the send button for a moment, not because I felt guilty, but because the moment felt final. Once I sent it, I couldn't go back to pretending. My phone rang 15 minutes later. This is Daniel Brooks, a man said, voice measured. Fraud prevention. You emailed an attachment and some logs. Well, yes, I said. I'm going to ask you a few questions, he said. No, I said. Did you authorize anyone to use your credentials to create or send it? No. Do you know who accessed your system? I glanced at the hallway, at the quiet house, at the sunlight on the floor. My husband, I said. The words felt strange in my mouth, like saying them made them real. There was a pause. Okay, Daniel said. Do you have proof of access? Logs, timestamps? Yes, I said. I have login records, export events, and the sent email from my account. Good, he said. Do not confront him. Do not tell him you've reported anything. If he's doing this, he'll try to cover it. And if there's a larger scheme, there may already be an investigation moving. A larger scheme, I repeated. People don't usually do this once, Daniel said. They do it because they've done it before and it worked. Tasked. My stomach tightened. What happens now? I asked. We'll notify the lender's compliance team, he said. They'll freeze the file. And depending on what we find, this may get escalated to state regulators and law enforcement. The phrase law enforcement made my hands go numb. Not because I was afraid of the truth, but because I understood what it meant. It meant Evan wasn't just my problem anymore. He would become a file number, a case, a record. It meant our life would be opened and inspected. After I hung up, I sat in my office with the blinds half drawn, staring at my laptop screen. A soft buzzing filled my ears. I could hear a neighbor's lawnmower in the distance. Life went on. Stubbornly, normal. At noon, Evan came home from the gym with a smoothie and a bright, artificial energy. He kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted to go out for brunch. I'm not hungry, I said. He frowned slightly. You sure? Just not hungry, I repeated. He shrugged, as if my appetite was an inconvenience, and turned on the TV. He started talking about a project again, about big money, about how his firm was tightening up because everyone was nervous about the market. They're overreacting, he said, scrolling his phone. But whatever. People get scared and they make dumb calls. What kind of dumb calls? I asked, keeping my voice light. He glanced at me. Compliance stuff, he said. Paperwork. People panicking. My throat tightened. Compliance? I echoed. Yeah, he said, waving a hand. It's nothing. But his eyes flickered. Just a second. He was listening to his own words, measuring them, watching my reaction. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, my back against the cool sheets, listening to Evan breathe. At 2:18 a.m., his phone buzzed softly. He didn't answer it, but he shifted, then rolled over and checked it under the blanket, the glow briefly lighting the underside of his face. He thought I didn't notice. He thought I was asleep. In the morning, Monday, the first thing I did was check my email. The brokerage compliance team had responded with a formal letter stating the refinance application was suspended pending investigation due to unauthorized documentation. The language was cold and corporate, but it gave me something solid. Then a second email came in from my state licensing board. My heart stopped. Subject line, Notice of Inquiry. The message said they'd received a report of potential misuse of an appraisal license number and were opening an inquiry to determine whether my credentials had been compromised. My hands shook as I read it. Even though I'd expected it, even though Karen had warned me, seeing it in writing made my throat tighten with fear. I could almost feel the invisible eyes turning toward me, evaluating. Was I a victim or an accomplice? Did I act quickly enough? Did I protect the public? I called Karen immediately. This is normal, she said after I read the email to her. It's terrifying, but it's normal. Respond carefully. We'll craft a statement. You have documentation. That's everything. It's sides. I swallowed hard. I feel like I'm the one on trial, I said. You're not, she said firmly. You're the one who reported it. That matters. At 9:30 a.m. Is this Lauren Mitchell? A woman asked. Yes. This is Agent Paula Hendricks, she said. I'm with the Colorado Attorney General's office. We were referred a report involving possible mortgage fraud and appraisal credential misuse. I need to speak with you. My mouth went dry. Okay, I managed. Are you safe? She asked. The question startled me. Yes, I said. I'm safe. Does the subject of this report live with you? She asked. Yes, I said. My husband. Has he been violent? She asked. No, I said quickly. No. He's not violent. Has he threatened you? she asked. I thought of his smooth voice, his casual control, his sentence in the bedroom. She doesn't know. Not like that. Not directly. I said. Okay, she replied. I'm going to schedule an in-person interview, and I need you to preserve all evidence. Do not delete anything. Do not warn him. If he becomes aware, he may destroy documents. I understand, I said, though my hands were trembling. After I hung up, I sat at my desk and stared at the wall. This had moved beyond my marriage, beyond my house, beyond my fear. It was now in the hands of people who dealt with criminals for a living. That afternoon, I went to a site inspection in Boulder because my calendar said I had to. I drove there on autopilot, my fingers gripping the steering wheel too tightly. The homeowner talked about their new kitchen countertops. I took photos, wrote notes, nodded. The sky was bright and blue, the kind of Colorado day that looks like a postcard. I felt like I was moving through it wearing a mask. When I got home, Evan was already there. That alone was unusual. He was in the kitchen with his laptop open, jaw tight, phone in his hand. You okay? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He looked up quickly, then forced a smile. What kind of nonsense? I asked. He shut the laptop a little too fast. My stomach clenched. About what? I asked. Evan's eyes narrowed slightly. Why are you so curious all of a sudden? I shrugged. You talk about it a lot, I said. He stared at me for a moment, then stood and walked closer, lowering his voice. Listen, he said. If anyone calls you about anything financial, just send them to me, okay? My heart hammered. I kept my face blank. Why would anyone call me? I asked. He smiled, but it wasn't warm. Because your name is on things, he said, like it was obvious. It's just how paperwork works. My name is on things, I repeated softly. Yeah, he said. Don't make it complicated. I looked at him, at the man I'd married, and felt something shift inside me, like the last thread of illusion snapped. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't him being careless. This was him treating my identity like a resource he could spend. That night, while Evan showered, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my phone to the local news app. A push notification popped up. Breaking. Regional real estate investment firm under investigation for alleged mortgage fraud. My stomach dropped. I clicked it. The article mentioned Evan's company by name. It mentioned suspicious appraisals, inflated valuations, questionable investor packets. It didn't mention Evan yet, but it didn't need to. I could feel the net tightening, thread by thread. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Upstairs, the shower water thundered. And on my phone screen, in plain text, was the public beginning of the collapse I'd been watching in private. Evan was still whistling in the shower. He still thought he was in control. He had no idea the world outside our front door was already starting to look in. On Tuesday morning, the neighborhood looked the same as it always did. Sprinklers clicked on and off. A kid waited at the corner for the school bus with a backpack dragging low on his shoulders. A woman in running shorts waved as she jogged past, earbuds in, lost in her own world. I stood at the kitchen sink watching all of it through the window, hands submerged in warm, soapy water, and felt like I was watching life from the wrong side. The news article from the night before had spread. I saw it in Evan's face the moment he came downstairs. He was trying to act normal, but his movements were sharper, more controlled. He poured coffee like the mug might spill, if he wasn't careful. He checked his phone too often, thumb moving fast, jaw tight. Did you see the news? He asked, forcing a casual tone. I kept my eyes on the plate I was rinsing. What news? He paused. About my firm, he said. I turned slightly, not too fast. No, I said. What happened? He studied my face, looking for something. It's nothing, he said, and the speed of his dismissal didn't match the tension in his voice. Just an article. People love drama. Are you worried? I asked. He scoffed, but it sounded thin. No, he said. We're fine. Bad actors. The phrase landed like a joke. In my office drawer, I had documents with my forged signature. On my external drive, I had logs showing Evan exporting files. In my inbox, I had a notice of inquiry from the licensing board. Bad actors didn't sound like a couple. It sounded like him. Evan left early, saying he had to handle something. When the door shut behind him, I exhaled slowly and sat at my desk. I didn't open my appraisal software. I opened my evidence folder. I checked that everything was saved in multiple places. Then I opened a new email and began drafting a statement for the licensing board, the way Karen had instructed, plain facts. No emotion, no speculation. Dates, times, documents, actions. Halfway through, my phone rang. Evan. I let it ring twice before I answered. Hey, I said. His voice sounded different, too polite, too controlled. Hi, he said. Where are you? Home, I replied. Okay, he said. Listen, I need you to do something for me. My stomach tightened. What? I asked. I'm going to send you an email, he said. If anyone calls you anyone about the refinance or any appraisal stuff, you tell them it's fine. You tell them you authorized it. Okay? For a moment, I couldn't speak. The audacity of it hit me like a slap. He wasn't asking. He was issuing instructions. Why would anyone call me? I asked, keeping my voice calm. There was a pause. Then he sighed as if I was being difficult. Because your name is on the paperwork, he said. That's what I told you. It's standard. It doesn't feel standard, I said. His tone sharpened. Lauren, he said, don't do this right now. You don't understand what's at stake. I felt heat rise in my face. I don't understand? I repeated. You think this is about you being offended, he snapped. It's bigger than that. My grip tightened on the phone. Then explain it, I said. He exhaled hard, like he was trying to keep control of himself. There are deals in motion, he said. People expecting things. If you start panicking and running your mouth, you will screw everything up. Running my mouth. Like the truth was gossip. Like my identity was his tool. I'm not panicking, I said quietly. I'm asking why my credit was pulled. Silence. Then his voice dropped, dangerous in its calm. Don't act like you don't know how this works, he said. You're my wife. We share assets. I can do what I need to do. My heart hammered. You forged my signature, I said softly. The line went quiet. Not dead, but silent. I could hear his breathing on the other end. The pause lasted long enough that I knew he hadn't expected me to say it. Then he laughed, low and short, like a warning. What are you talking about? He said. I saw the documents, I said. The appraisal report. The signature. My license number. The emails sent from my account. His breathing changed. You went through my stuff? He asked, flipping the narrative immediately. No, I said. You went through mine. Du es mot. He swallowed. I could hear it. Then his tone shifted into something almost gentle, which scared me more than anger. Lauren, he said, you're stressed. You're connecting dots that aren't connected. I have access logs, I said. Logs can be wrong, he said quickly. Software glitches. You know that. You used legal paper, I said. Another pause. What? He asked. The printer tray, I said. Legal size. We never use it. But it's been stocked. Someone's been printing at night. His voice tightened. Why are you checking the printer tray? He demanded. I stared at the wall in my office, my mouth dry. Because you're stealing my work, I said. Now his anger broke through. I'm not stealing anything, he said sharply. I'm protecting us. I'm doing what you don't have the guts to do. What does that mean? I asked. It means you sit at home and appraise houses, he snapped. You don't understand how the world actually works. You don't understand what it takes to win. Win. The word hit me hard. Evan, I said, forcing my voice steady. You're putting my license at risk. He scoffed. Your license will be fine, he said. No one cares about the appraiser. They care about the deal. I felt cold all over. Then stop, he said. Stop digging. Stop calling people. Stop making this a thing. I took a breath. I called the brokerage, I said. I told them I didn't authorize it. The silence on the line this time was heavier. Then his voice came back, low and clipped. You did what? I stopped the file, I said. A sound came through the phone like he'd slammed something down. Are you out of your mind? He hissed. Do you have any idea what you just did? I protected myself, I said. You just put us on someone's radar, he snapped. He stopped, like he'd almost said too much. On whose radar? I asked, voice calm. He didn't answer. His breathing was sharp. Then he said, I'm coming home. The call ended. I sat there, staring at my phone. My hands were trembling. The house felt suddenly too quiet, too open. I stood up and locked my office door, then walked through the house, checking windows and doors like I was preparing for a storm. At 11:20, Evan's car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the living room window, heart pounding. He got out fast, slammed the car door, and walked to the front door with a tight, furious posture. When he stepped inside, his eyes scanned the house, landing on me like a target. What did you do? He demanded. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I told them I didn't authorize the refinance, I said, and I reported the forged appraisal. To cost. His face went pale for a fraction of a second. Then it twisted into anger. You had no right, he said. No right? I repeated softly. You're my wife, he said, stepping closer. You don't do things like that without talking to me. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. I kept my voice steady. You didn't talk to me when you used my credentials, I said. He laughed, bitter and sharp. You're acting like I hacked the Pentagon, he said. It's paperwork. It's my license, I said. My name. Oh, fine, office. He leaned in, eyes narrowed. Your name is on this house too, he said. On everything we own. If you blow this up, you blow up your own life. I stared at him and realized he meant it. He truly believed fear would make me comply, that the threat of losing comfort would keep me quiet. I'm not blowing it up, I said. You did, his jaw clenched. You don't get it, he said, voice lowering. There are people involved, real people. If you start talking to investigators, you don't know what you're inviting into our lives. My skin went cold. Investigators? I repeated. His eyes flickered, and in that flicker I saw it. He'd already been contacted. He already knew something was coming. You already talked to someone, I said quietly. He stepped back half a pace, then caught himself. No, he said too fast. I'm just saying, you're scared, I said. He glared at me. I'm not scared, but he was. It was in the way his hands flexed, in the way his gaze kept shifting as if the walls might be listening. It was in the way his confidence had turned into pressure. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The house felt like it was holding us in place. The daisies on the counter sagged in their cloudy water. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Then Evan's phone buzzed. He looked down at it and his face tightened. He didn't answer. He shoved it into his pocket and looked at me again. Lauren, he said, voice suddenly softer, almost pleading. We can fix this. Just stop. Let me handle it. I stared at him, at the man who had forged my signature, and still expected me to trust him. You've been handling it, I said. And look where we are. His eyes flashed. Fine, he said. If you want war, you'll get it. It's 17 as lime. He turned and stormed upstairs, leaving me standing in the living room with my heart pounding and my hands clenched at my sides. A minute later, I heard drawers opening. Closets. The sound of something heavy being moved. He was gathering documents. He was trying to erase the trail. And in that moment, I understood the terrifying truth. Evan wasn't just capable of fraud. He was capable of destroying anything that proved it, including me, if I let him. So I picked up my phone and made the call that would make it impossible for either of us to pretend anymore. My fingers were shaking when I dialed, but I didn't stop. I called Karen first because she was the one who understood the legal terrain, the one who wouldn't panic and wouldn't sugarcoat. He's home, I said as soon as she answered. He's pulling drawers open. I think he's gathering paperwork. Are you safe? She asked immediately. Yes, I said. He's not violent, but he's angry. Okay? She said. Do not engage. If you believe he's destroying evidence, you call the investigator contact. If you feel unsafe, you call 911. Do you have somewhere you can go right now inside the house where you can lock a door? My office, I said. Go there, she said. Lock it. Take your phone and your keys. Keep your voice calm if he tries to talk through the door. I walked down the hall with my heart pounding, hearing Evan upstairs, drawers sliding, hangers clacking. I shut my office door and locked it, then stood with my back against the wood for a moment, breathing shallowly. My hands felt cold. My mouth was dry. The house that everyone admired suddenly felt like a trap with pretty paint. I called Agent Paula Hendricks next. When she answered, her tone was brisk. Mitchell? It's happening, I said. He's home. He's moving things around. I think he's trying to destroy documents. Are you in immediate danger? She asked. No, I said, but he knows I reported it. Where are you right now? She asked. In my home office. Door locked. Good, she said. Do not leave that room until I tell you. I'm dispatching local officers to do a welfare check and preserve evidence. Do not announce that. Do not threaten him with that. Just stay calm. My throat tightened. Officers are coming here? Yes, she said. This has crossed into potential criminal conduct. We need to make sure evidence isn't destroyed. Keep your phone on speaker if you can. I set my phone on my desk and turned speaker on. My legs felt weak, but I stayed standing, forcing myself to look around the room as if I could anchor myself in ordinary objects. Stapler, tape dispenser, a stack of blank forms, a small plant I always forgot to water. Normal life arranged neatly while something ugly crawled underneath. From upstairs, I heard Evan's footsteps coming down the stairs. Heavy, fast. He moved through the hallway and stopped outside my office door. Lauren, he said, voice tight. Open the door. I didn't answer. Open it, he repeated, louder. I kept my eyes on the desk. My heart hammered. Lauren, he said again, and this time his voice had a different edge. I'm not going to ask nicely. I swallowed hard. I'm working, I said, my voice calm, but slightly hoarse. You're working, he scoffed. On what? Ruining us? I didn't reply. He tried the doorknob. It rattled, then stopped. The silence afterward felt heavy. I can't believe you, he said, quieter now. After everything I've done for you, the phrase was almost absurd. Everything he'd done for me. Like his fraud was generosity. Like his control was love. I heard him exhale sharply. Fine, he muttered. Then his footsteps moved away. My stomach clenched. I listened for where he went. I heard cabinets opening in the kitchen. The sound of paper sliding. A drawer closing hard. Then silence. Agent Hendricks's voice came through my phone, low and steady. He's still in the home? Yes, I whispered. Officers are en route, she said. Stay where you are. Minutes passed like hours. My body was tense in ways I didn't know it could be. Every small sound made me flinch. A car passing outside. The furnace clicking on. The faint creak of the house settling. Then I heard the doorbell. Evan's footsteps moved quickly toward the front door. I held my breath. I heard muffled voices. A man's voice. Calm. And professional. Evan's voice. Sharp at first. Then, smoother. Like he was slipping into his public persona. He could charm. He could perform. He'd been doing it our whole marriage. I moved quietly to the corner of the office, where I could see part of the entryway through the crack between the hallway and the living room. I didn't open the door. I just watched through the narrow angle. 2 uniformed police officers stood at the entry. One was older, graying at the temples. The other looked younger, alert. Evan stood in the doorway with an expression of irritated surprise. Is there a problem? Evan asked, voice friendly. Mr. Mitchell? The older officer said. Yes, Evan replied. We're here to conduct a welfare check and ask a few questions, the officer said. Evan's smile tightened. About what? The younger officer glanced at a clipboard. We received a report of possible financial fraud involving an appraisal license and mortgage documents, he said. We need to speak with your wife. Lauren Mitchell. My stomach dropped. Even though I'd asked for help, hearing it out loud in my doorway made it real in a way nothing else had. Fraud. License. Mortgage documents. Words that didn't belong in the same space as our porch swing and flower beds. Evan's eyes flicked toward my office door. His jaw clenched. Lauren's busy, he said quickly. This is a misunderstanding. We still need to speak with her. the older officer said. Evan's tone sharpened. She's fine, he snapped. We're fine. This is ridiculous. The younger officer didn't flinch. Sir, he said, we're going to need you to step outside for a moment while we speak with her. Evan's face went pale, then flushed. He opened his mouth to argue, then shut it. He looked like a man calculating risk in real time. He stepped outside. The older officer looked into the house. Ma'am? He called. Lauren? It's the police. Are you okay? My voice came out thinner than I wanted. I'm in my office, I said through the door. I'm okay. Can you come to the doorway where we can see you? The officer asked. I hesitated, then unlocked the office door and opened it a few inches. The hallway felt colder than the office, like stepping into exposure. The officers turned toward me immediately, their eyes scanning my face, my posture. You're Lauren Mitchell? The older officer asked. Yes, I said. Are you safe? He asked. Yes, I said again. But my voice trembled. The younger officer's gaze shifted to the hallway, then to the office behind me. Ma'am, he said gently. Do you have documentation related to this report? I nodded. Yes, I said. I have emails and logs, and a refinance application, with a forged signature. The older officer's expression tightened. Okay, he said. We're going to ask you to stay calm and let us handle this step by step. We're not here to arrest anyone on the spot unless there's immediate cause. But we are going to document what's here. Evan's voice rose outside. This is insane, he said. She's overreacting. The older officer stepped slightly into the house, his presence firm. Sir, he called toward the open door. Lower your voice. Evan muttered something I couldn't make out. The younger officer turned to me. Do you want to retrieve the documents? He asked. Or do you want us to observe while you do? I can get them, I said. My hands were shaking as I walked back into the office and pulled the printed evidence from the drawer. The papers felt stiff and heavy. I carried them into the hallway and handed them to the older officer, who took them carefully, like they mattered. Like I mattered. He flipped through the pages. The forged signature, the inflated value, the lender email confirmations. His expression grew more serious with each page. This is concerning, he said quietly. Outside, Evan's voice turned softer again, pleading now. You don't understand, he said. This is just business. This is paperwork. I wasn't hurting anyone. I felt a sharp, bitter laugh rise in my throat, but I swallowed it. He wasn't hurting anyone. As if my career was no one. As if my identity was collateral. The younger officer asked me a few questions when I discovered it. Whether I'd confronted him, whether I'd been threatened. I answered plainly. Dates, times, actions. Every answer felt like I was cutting another cord holding us together. Then the older officer said something that made my stomach drop again. Ma'am, he said. Based on what we're seeing, this may need to be referred to investigators for further action. Your husband may also be asked to provide devices and documents. This could escalate quickly. I nodded, my throat tight. From the doorway, Evan called my name, his voice suddenly raw. Lauren, please, he said. Please don't do this. I looked at him, standing on our porch like a stranger. His face strained, his eyes angry and scared, his hands clenched at his sides. For a moment, I saw the version of him I'd married, the young man who promised we were building something together. But that version was gone. What stood there now was a man who'd tried to sign my name onto lies and expected me to stay quiet. I didn't do this, I said, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me. You did, his eyes flashed, and for a second I thought he might lunge forward. But the officers shifted, their bodies subtly creating a barrier. Evan stopped himself, swallowing whatever rage was rising. The older officer handed me a card. Here's the case number, he said. An investigator will contact you. If he tries to pressure you or destroy evidence, you call us immediately. I took the card. The numbers on it looked like a receipt, proof that my life had been turned into a file. After the officers left, the house went quiet again, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. It was the quiet after a door has been opened to the outside world. And you can't close it anymore. Evan walked back in slowly. You really did it, he said, voice low. I stood in the hallway holding the case number card, feeling my heart hammer, feeling the floor solid under my feet. Yes, I said. And in his face, I saw the moment he understood that the rules he'd been using against me no longer belonged to him. After the officers left, Evan didn't explode the way I expected. He didn't throw anything or slam doors. He stood in the entryway for a long moment, staring at the space where they'd been, like he was watching the last of his control drain out of the house. Then he turned to me slowly, his face blank in a way that felt more dangerous than anger. "So, that's it," he said. I didn't answer right away. I could feel my pulse in my wrists. My hands were cold. The case number card was still in my palm, damp from sweat. Evan took a step closer. "You understand what you've done," he said, voice low. "You've put a target on our backs." I looked at him. "You put a target on me," I said. His jaw tightened. "Don't," he snapped. "Don't act like you're the only victim here. We built a life. You're lighting it on fire." I heard the echo of his words from earlier. "If you blow this up, you blow up your own life." That had been his favorite weapon. Make me afraid of consequences so I'd accept the harm. My voice came out steady. "I'm not lighting anything on fire," I said. "I'm stopping you from using my name." Evan stared at me, breathing hard through his nose. Then his expression shifted, like he decided anger wouldn't work. His shoulders dropped slightly. His voice softened. "Lauren," he said, "we can fix this." The softness almost made me flinch. It sounded like a trap. "How?" I asked. He spread his hands, palms up, like he was offering reason. "I'll talk to them," he said. "I'll explain. It's a misunderstanding. It was rushed. I shouldn't have used your signature. Okay? That was wrong. But it's not as dramatic as you're making it." My throat tightened. "You forged my signature," I said. He winced, as if the words physically hurt him. "Because it was for us," he said, leaning in. "It was to protect us. You think I wanted to do that? You think I wanted to take shortcuts?" I laughed once, short and bitter. "You didn't look like you hated it," I said. His eyes flashed. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," he said. "Pressure doesn't make you steal," I replied. He stepped closer, voice rising again. "You think you're so moral," he hissed. "You think you're above it. But you live in this house. You enjoy the benefits. You take the vacations. You like the image. And then the second it gets messy, you want to wash your hands like you're innocent." I felt heat rise behind my eyes. For a moment, I could taste the old instinct to defend myself, to explain, to prove I was good. But I stopped. "I didn't ask you to do this," I said quietly. "I didn't ask you to pull my credit. I didn't ask you to inflate values. I didn't ask you to use my license like a costume." Evan's face tightened. "If you just trusted me," he said. I stared at him. "Trust isn't something you demand after you break it," I said. Silence filled the hallway. The kitchen light hummed softly. Outside, the neighborhood was still. Somewhere, a car door shut. A dog barked once and stopped. Everything ordinary continued. But inside the house, it felt like we were standing at the edge of something irreversible. Evan looked away first. He ran a hand through his hair, then walked into the kitchen and leaned against the counter, staring at the drooping daisies. "This is going to get ugly," he said, voice quieter now. "I know," I replied. He turned his head slightly. "You think you're going to walk away clean?" he asked. "You think they're going to believe you didn't know? You think your precious board won't look at you like you're part of it?" My stomach clenched. That fear was real. He knew it. He was aiming for it. "I have proof," I said. "Proof can disappear," he muttered. The words made my skin go cold. He looked at me, and for a split second I saw something flicker in his eyes. Then it was gone. He shrugged. "Nothing," he said. "Just saying. That night, I slept with my phone under my pillow and my keys on the nightstand. Evan slept in the guest room, or at least he said he was going to. I didn't check. I locked my office door before bed and took the external drive out of the house, putting it in my car trunk under a blanket, like I was hiding something precious. At Trey. Jutung. I woke up to the sound of a door opening downstairs. My heart started pounding immediately. I lay still, listening. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. A drawer sliding. The faint beep of a keypad. I sat up and grabbed my phone, hands shaking. I crept to the top of the stairs and looked down into the dark. Evan stood in the hallway near my office door. He was holding something in his hands. His phone screen cast a pale light on his face. He looked up. For a second, we froze, staring at each other across the stairwell. "What are you doing?" I whispered. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Getting something," he said. "From my office?" I asked. He didn't answer. He turned and walked back toward the guest room. I stood there, shaking. Not because I thought he'd hurt me physically, but because I realized how far he was willing to go to control the story. He wasn't just angry. He was calculating. In the morning, my access logs showed an attempted login at 3:19 a.m. Failed. Then another. Failed again. He'd tried to get into my laptop. I drove to Maya's office before 9, my hands gripping the steering wheel too hard. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She just let me in and locked the door behind me. "He tried last night," I said. Maya's eyes narrowed. "Tried what?" "To access my laptop," I said. "He was outside my office in the dark." "Devil-intated." Maya's mouth tightened. "Okay," she said. "Then we escalate your protection plan. Change locks. Consider a temporary restraining order if he threatens you. And Lauren, you need to start thinking about leaving the house." The word leaving made my stomach twist. The house was mine too. I'd painted those walls. I'd picked the tile. I'd planted the flowers. Leaving felt like surrender, but staying felt like living with a man who would erase me to save himself. That afternoon, Agent Hendricks called again. Her voice was brisk, but there was a weight in it now. "We've opened a case," she said. "And I need you to understand something. This isn't isolated. We're seeing patterns tied to your husband's firm. Multiple suspicious appraisals, multiple lenders, multiple names." My throat tightened. "Does my name come up?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "That's why your documentation matters. It's showing us where your name appears and why." I swallowed hard. "What happens to him?" I asked. "Investigators will contact him," she said. Consequences. The word hung in the air after she said it, heavy and unavoidable. When I got home that evening, Evan was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop closed, hands folded like he'd been waiting. His face looked tired, but not remorseful. More like someone forced to negotiate. "We need to talk," he said. I set my bag down slowly. "Okay," I replied. He looked up at me, eyes hard. "If you go through with this," he said, "you're not just hurting me. You're hurting yourself. You're hurting both of us." I stared at him and felt something inside me settle into a truth I didn't want. "We're already hurt," I said. "The difference is I'm not willing to be silent anymore." For a moment, Evan's expression wavered. And then, like a switch flipped, he leaned forward and said something that made my blood run cold. "You think you're the whistleblower," he said quietly. "But you're not the only one whose name is on those files." I felt my chest tighten. "What does that mean?" I asked. Evan's smile was thin. "It means you should check your own past reports," he said. Axe. And in that moment, the revenge I thought I was delivering turned into something darker. Because Evan wasn't just threatening me. He was warning me that the collapse was going to take more than my marriage with it. After Evan said it, the kitchen felt smaller, like the walls had edged closer. I stood there, staring at him, hearing the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock above the stove, and the steady rush of blood in my ears. His words settled into my body like ice. "Check your own past reports. You might find things you don't want to see." I forced myself to breathe slowly. "Are you saying you changed my old files?" I asked. Evan shrugged, almost bored. "I'm saying you've been busy," he replied. "You didn't watch everything as closely as you think." My hands clenched at my sides. "What did you do?" I asked again, sharper. He leaned back in his chair. "I did what I had to do," he said. "For years. You think this started last week? You think I woke up and decided to ruin your life? No. This is how things have been working." A nauseating heat rose in my throat. "For years?" I repeated. He met my eyes, and for the first time I saw what I'd missed for too long. Not guilt, not remorse, just entitlement. Like I'd finally noticed the real rules of his world, and he was irritated it took me so long. "You've been fine," he said. "You've had your nice little career, your clients, your schedule. You've lived in this house. You've benefited." "Stop saying that," I snapped. I didn't benefit from fraud. Evan's mouth tightened. You benefited from me keeping the machine running, he said. From me making sure we didn't fall behind when things got tight. My stomach dropped. Tight. He meant money. He meant the years when we were paying off renovations, when my work slowed down, when we spent thousands on doctor visits and tests we never talked about afterward. I remembered Evan handling the bills, telling me it was easier if he did it, telling me not to worry. I'd let him, because I was tired and sad and believed marriage meant division of labor, not division of truth. I backed away from the table slowly, like stepping away from a ledge. I'm going to check, I said, my voice quiet. Evan laughed softly. Go ahead, he said, but you're not going to like what you find. I walked down the hall to my office and locked the door behind me. My hands shook as I opened my laptop. I forced myself to move carefully, like a surgeon. I didn't open random folders. I went straight to my archived reports, the ones I'd filed away over the past several years. Thousands of pages. Dozens of properties. A long paper trail of my professional life. I started with the report that had paid for our roof replacement 3 years ago. I remembered it because the homeowner had been kind, offering me lemonade, asking about my job with genuine interest. I'd felt proud turning in that report. It had been clean, defensible, boring in the best way. I opened the PDF and scrolled. Everything looked normal at first. Then I stopped at the comparable sales grid and my eyes narrowed. A comp price didn't match what I remembered. My throat tightened. I pulled up the county record for that sale. The real number was lower, not drastically, but enough to shift the valuation. The PDF in my archive showed the higher number. My heart started hammering. I checked the file metadata. The report had been created on the date I remembered, but the last modified date was 6 months later. The modification wasn't from a software update. It was a manual change. My hands went cold. I opened another report, then another. I checked only 3 before my stomach turned. Small changes, slightly higher comps. Adjustments nudged in one direction. Not every report, but enough to create a pattern. Enough to make my skin crawl. Evan had been inside my work for years, quietly editing my history, shaping valuations to fit whatever he needed. Then, hiding behind my credibility, like it belonged to him. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. My mouth was dry. My eyes burned. This wasn't just betrayal. This was contamination. My professional identity had been used, altered, and weaponized without my knowledge. I heard a knock on the office door. Lauren, Evan called, voice calm. We need to be smart right now. I didn't answer. He knocked again, harder. You're spiraling, he said. This is exactly what I mean. You're emotional, and you're going to make mistakes. I stared at the evidence on my screen and felt something settle in me. Not rage, not panic, a cold refusal. I stood up, opened the door, and looked at him. His eyes flicked past me into the office, searching. So? He asked quietly. You found something. I didn't flinch. Yes, I said. He nodded like he'd expected it. Okay, he said. Then you understand. This is bigger than your feelings. My feelings, I repeated. Your sense of betrayal, he said. Listen, if you keep pushing, you're going to get dragged in. If investigators think you were involved, you lose everything. So here's what we do. We present it as a security breach. We blame an outside party. We say your credentials were compromised. We cooperate just enough. We protect ourselves. This 5. Us, I said. He stepped closer. Yes, he said. Us. You and me. We're married. That's the only thing that matters right now. My heart hammered, but my voice stayed steady. You want me to lie, I said. I want you to survive, he snapped. Then he caught himself and lowered his voice again. Lauren, you don't have to like it. You just have to be smart. I stared at him. The man who had forged my signature and rewritten my work, and realized he still believed he could talk me into obedience. He thought he was the only strategist in this house. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. His shoulders relaxed slightly. Good, he said. Finally, send me everything, I added. Every document you've used. Every lender contact. Every investor packet. If I'm going to protect myself, I need to see what's out there. Evan hesitated. He turned away, satisfied. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk and waited, watching my phone for emails. Around 1:20 a.m., Evan finally sent a folder link from his personal account. The message was short. Here, don't freak out. My hands were steady as I clicked it. Inside was a web of files, appraisal PDFs, spreadsheets labeled with investor initials, draft emails, loan scenarios, and in the middle of it, a document that made my stomach drop so fast I had to grip the edge of the desk. A risk mitigation memo. It wasn't written like a normal business document. It was blunt, cold. A list of contingencies if Lauren becomes uncooperative. Suggestions for how to control narrative and limit exposure. And there, in plain text, was a line that turned my blood to ice. If necessary, attribute discrepancies to Lauren's negligence and emotional instability. I stared at the sentence until the letters blurred. He wasn't just using me. He was preparing to sacrifice me. All the softness I'd ever offered him. Every apology I'd made for being too sensitive. Every time I'd swallowed a question to keep peace. It all condensed into one clear truth. He would throw me under the bus and call it strategy. I forwarded the entire folder to Karen and Agent Hendricks, along with a short message. He sent this. It includes a memo about scapegoating me. Then I sat back and listened to the house. Evan was asleep upstairs, probably believing he'd just scared me into compliance. Probably believing he'd won. 2 days later, the investigation went public in a way I hadn't anticipated. Not just a local news article, but a press conference announcement. Evan's firm was named. Several executives were named. Lenders were cooperating. Digital devices were seized. The words mortgage fraud were said out loud into microphones. Evan came home that night looking like a man who'd been hit by a car. His face was pale. His hands trembled when he set his keys down. They're blaming me, he said, voice raw. They're saying I let it. I watched him quietly. Did you? I asked. He looked at me like he couldn't believe the question. No, he said. I mean, I did what I had to do. But I wasn't alone. He stepped closer, eyes desperate. Lauren, tell them, he said. Tell them you didn't know. Tell them it was me. Just me. You'll be fine. You'll keep your license. Please. For a moment, the irony almost made me laugh. He wanted me to tell the truth now, but only the truth that saved him. I already told them, I said quietly. His eyes widened. Told them what? He whispered. I held his gaze. Everything, I said. Evan's face crumpled, then hardened. You ruined me, he said, voice rising. I didn't flinch. You ruined you, I replied. A week later, I moved out of the house. Not because I lost it, but because I refused to be trapped inside a place that had been used against me. Karen helped me file for divorce and protective orders around my financial identity. The licensing board, after reviewing the logs and the memo, ruled that my credentials had been compromised and that I acted appropriately once I discovered it. My license stayed intact. That was the part I didn't expect to feel. Relief. Not joy, not triumph. Relief that my name still belonged to me. Months later, I sold the house. The porch swing creaked one last time when the buyers tested it. The yard looked perfect for listing photos. I stood in the empty living room and let myself feel the grief. Not for Evan, but for the version of my life I'd believed in. Then I locked the door and walked away. Now I live in a smaller place, on the edge of open land, where the nights are quiet and the quiet feels honest. I consult part-time with lenders on fraud prevention, teaching them how small changes in documents can hide big lies. Sometimes I still wake up early and listen for the printer, even though I don't own one anymore. The last twist, the one Evan never saw coming, was that his greatest weapon paperwork became the thing that exposed him completely. And the cost he thought I would pay alone ended up being the price that finally set me free.